Hey Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl. It's going to be my quick check-in before the game tomorrow afternoon against Cincinnati Bengals. Before we get into that, I want to give you a few thoughts on the game that was Monday night against the Packers, which was just a brutal game. Didn't get a chance to do a video after that. Bottom line is I was really frustrated with the fact that I think we were just flat out outcoached in that game. The first place that we really got outcoached was on the defensive side of the ball with Jim Schwartz, or not necessarily so much outcoached as Aaron Rodgers just used what Jim Schwartz was doing against him. Jim Schwartz was playing the defensive backs way off the receivers and only rushing four. So Aaron Rodgers was just sort of able to sit back through those underneath routes, and they were completing passes all day long. And it just took Jim Schwartz forever to try and adjust to that. And even when he did, it wasn't done properly. It wasn't executed properly. So it just was poor defensive planning, I think, on their part. And seeing something wasn't working, they should have gone away from it, gone into press coverage, gone with some blitzes, tried to make Aaron Rodgers make some quick decisions, and he didn't do it. So that was my frustration on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, with Doug Peterson, where do I start? I had said in my preview video that I had thought that they needed to pass the ball more against Green Bay secondary because Green Bay secondary was suspect. It became very apparent early in that game that that was not the way you were going to win that game. And as a matter of fact, I even had that thought before the game when I heard Barrett Brooks wasn't going to be playing. That told me that they would have been better off sticking more with a running game, especially when you saw the way Aaron Rodgers was moving the ball against our defense. Sort of they should have taken the same approach that they did with the Atlanta game where they were trying to keep Matt Ryan on the sideline. They should have done the same thing with Aaron Rodgers and tried to run the ball more. This game was never out of hand that they couldn't have done that and just really stuck with the running game. It really didn't sort of get out of hand until the fourth quarter. So even at halftime, they should have been able to make that adjustment and say, we're going to run the ball more in the second half. And in fact, they actually even did that. They came out in the second half and they ran the ball very well on that opening drive of the second half. And they were moving the ball down the field. And then Doug Peterson called a pass play on first down, which I have no problem with that. You want to try and change it up, keep the defense off balance. That's fine. But on that play, Carson Wentz just got absolutely rocked. And it was clear, even watching on TV, you could tell that he was hurt, that he had winced, and he had really taken a hard hit. And at that point, it's 2nd and 10 because it was an incomplete pass. It was 2nd and 10. At that point, I think, given what had happened and the fact that you had the ball over midfield at that point, you just need to go ahead and run the ball that next down. Give your quarterback a chance to get his breath or catch his breath. They weren't in a third down situation where they had to get yardage to complete a first down. They could have just run the ball, maybe tried to get third down a little bit more manageable, and let Carson Wentz sort of catch his breath after absorbing the big hit. Doug Peterson calls another pass play, and at that point, Carson Wentz sails the ball and it gets intercepted. And at that point, once that play happened, I sort of figured there was no way we were ever going to win that game, just because of the way the whole game was playing out. Now, I think Carson Wentz made a bad throw and a bad decision in terms of that play as well. So I think he has most of the blame on that. But Doug Peterson has a large part of the blame on that turnover, recognizing what's happening. Some of that times, the things that I think Doug Peterson really lacks in is his in-game smarts, so to speak, and just trying to sort of realizing what's going on as it's happening and being able to make a quick adjustment. I think he gets too caught up in his play sheet, sort of like Andy Reid used to do. And he gets too caught up in that play sheet and wanting to call the next play and not really looking and seeing what's happening on the field and the fact that his quarterback had just really gotten hurt and he sort of just needed a play where he wasn't going to be expected to do much. So it just, stuff like that just really sort of irked me. And then, of course, the real boneheaded play of the whole game was the challenge on the 2-yard completion. And I don't care that the fact they won the challenge. And it really doesn't bother me that he tried to challenge the punt in the first half because I think that was a big play and I think that was worth taking a shot at trying to overturn that because it was a huge play in terms of field position. But this one, there was hardly anything to do with field position. If it had been a third down play and that extra 2 yards was going to be the difference between them getting in field goal range or not being in field goal range, maybe then you do it. But it was a first down play, so you're talking the difference between 2nd and 8 and 2nd and 10, which is basically nothing. And Green Bay showed you that because they ended up marching down the field right after that anyway. So it just completely shows sometimes how Doug Peterson, I think, he just doesn't think well on his feet sometimes during the game. I'm hoping that that's something that he will overcome, and this is just the fact of him being a rookie, and this isn't a long-term problem. But it was things like that used to drive me nuts about an old coach we had, Rich Kotite, who used to do some of the stupidest things in game, and you sit there and say, what was he thinking? And that's sort of the way I was thinking about Doug Peterson in that game. I just think he just completely got out-coached. He never really adjusted to what was happening in the game. And in that one instance, he just showed sometimes how much of a bonehead he can be. And I think he's the one that bears most of the responsibility for that loss. So let's turn our attention to the game tomorrow against the Bengals. And looking at this game, at this point, I don't really know what to think about this team because they've shown times where they've looked really good. They've shown that they've been good against good teams, too. The Vikings have obviously fallen off lately, so that win doesn't look quite as impressive. And the Steelers are playing okay, so that win doesn't look quite as good maybe as it did at the time. But the Atlanta Falcons are still playing solid football, and the fact that we beat that team, I think, says a lot. Looking at this game tomorrow, I think they sort of need to take a different approach with this game and go back to the running game. Now, I know Ryan Matthews probably is not going to play in this game, but Smallwood has really shown that I think he is able to carry the load as a running back, and I think this is sort of could be his coming out party. And that's the way I would look at it if I were the Eagles, is I would try and get Wendell Smallwood the ball as much as you possibly can and try and get him going, and maybe this is a game he can really start to establish himself and get himself going, because that's the way I think we win this game, is we've got to win this game running the ball. I say that because the Bengals are 28th in rush defense, so they have been horrible against the run this year. So if there's a way we're going to move the ball against them, that's it. They're also 23rd in overall defense in terms of yardage, so you can move the ball against this defense. They get a little stingy when it gets to points. They're 17th, so they're about average in the league when it comes to points surrendered. But this is a team you can move the ball against and you can score points against. So from that perspective, I think the offense of the Eagles, which has sort of been very lackluster of late. I mean, you think about it, they scored a touchdown on the first drive of that Packers game and then only got 6 points the rest of the way. And that was a defense that had been playing horribly. So really, I think this is an opportunity for them to really sort of maybe establish themselves again, get a running game going, and really use the running game to your advantage. So that's the approach I really think they should take with this game. As for the Cincinnati offense, it's a very strange in terms of looking at statistics of that game. They are 10th in overall yardage in terms of yards per game. But if you look at their points, they're 27th in points per game. So they are moving the ball but not scoring. So that really, I think, it really struck me when I saw that differential. That was huge. The fact that they have been able to move the ball, but they really aren't always able to put points on the board. That tells me that they're probably having trouble in the red zone. They're not being able to score as much. And in terms of touchdowns, they're having to settle for field goals. Their turnover differential isn't that bad. They're actually a +1 in turnover differential, so it's not like they're moving the ball and then turning the ball over. Another thing, though, to look at in terms of probably what's sort of hurting them is they've given up 32 sacks this year, which is 29th in the league. So that's, I think, another thing that we can really try and do is we got no pressure on Aaron Rodgers last week, so we really need to get a pass rush going again. I think Jim Schwartz really needs to take a look at this one and probably maybe try and take a little more chances and blitz a little bit more because you just cannot allow a quarterback to stand back there and pick apart this defense because this defense is not that good. If we were a little bit better at the cornerback position, then I'd be okay with what he was doing against Aaron Rodgers. But when you're weak against a cornerback, that's probably why he's playing his guys off a little bit. But the problem then is that just invites what Aaron Rodgers did, which is completing those underneath passes. So I really think the way we need to approach this is really try and blitz more and try and make Andy Dalton make some quick decisions and really, because I think that's a way we can win this game, is getting him to make quick decisions. And then ultimately trying to keep them out of the end zone, I think, is going to be important as well. Because if we're giving up touchdowns to them, I think that's been a bit of an Achilles heel for them. If we can keep them where they are moving the ball but having to settle for field goals, I think that will go a long way. But I think we can win this game. like I said, though, at this point in terms of the season, looking at the season, that's really the question in terms of really wanting to know how well this team is going to play tomorrow. Because some teams get into a situation like the Eagles are in right now where pretty much their season is over. If they're going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to probably win out, because I don't think 9-7 is going to be good enough to get a wild card. So they're really going to need to win out to get to 10-6. And if you look at the stretch that they've got coming up, that's going to be really hard to do. I mean, I think every game on their schedule from here to the end of the season is winnable, but all of them is going to be really tough. There's no way I think we go 6 straight and win 6 straight. The most we've ever won all season has been 3 straight, and that was the 3 at the beginning of the season. So I really don't see us winning 6 straight games. So if the team is sort of that mindset of we're probably not going to make the playoffs, then it becomes a question of how hard are they going to be trying. And that's something we really don't know about this team. The team basically last year, I think they really started to quit on Chip Kelly, but I think that was for other reasons. I think they didn't believe in him and his system and what he was doing. I think this is a little bit different. I think the team has bought a little bit more into what Doug Peterson is doing and trying to support the rookie quarterback. So I think the team will still play, hopefully. So I really think the Eagles can win this game. For that reason, I am going to pick them to win. My score is going to be Eagles 24, Bengals 16. This is a winnable game. There's no reason we shouldn't win this game. The only thing that concerns me going into this is just what team shows up, because that's been the whole problem this year, is sort of the Jekyll and Hyde of teams that we've had, where some weeks they look really good and other weeks, like this past week against the Packers, they just look horrible. So that's really a question as to which team shows up. I think the Eagles do put it together. They will show up, and like I said, I like them to win 24-16. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Do you think the Eagles have a shot in this game against the Bengals, or do you think the season's lost and they're just going to tank it for the rest of the way? Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Tonight, Big Ten championship game with Penn State, so I'm pulling for them. Also, I'll check in after the Eagles game tomorrow. Until all that, fly Eagles fly.